Another day, another popular announcement, another photo opportunity which news organisations will struggle to resist. Boris Johnson's going to be in prison today to highlight the latest of his tough on crime announcements. A Snap YouGov poll overnight said 75% of people supported the idea of greater use of stop and search, including, note this, 90% of Leave supporters. So, are we now in full election campaigning mode? We're joined by the woman who was David Cameron's press secretary in opposition and then Number 10's Director of External Relations when David Cameron was Prime Minister, Baroness Gabby Bertin, and by Matt Sanders, former Special Advisor to the Deputy Prime Minister Nick Clegg, who worked alongside the man who is said to be the mastermind of it all, Dominic Cummings. Morning to you both.
Good morning.
Is this, Gabby, full election mode at Number 10?
Well, I'm going to play devil's advocate for a moment, Nick, and say, look, I don't think you can absolutely assume that this is naked electioneering on Boris Johnson's part. I think we have, by its own admission, got very used to a government that was totally engulfed by Brexit, that was unable to get any kind of toehold in the domestic agenda. And so now we're being treated to this new energetic administration that is focusing on issues that people actually want to hear about, like crime and NHS, and we automatically assume that therefore there must be an election coming down the track. And my point is that there may well be an election coming down the track, by the way, but we should have a bit of a reality check. This is how good, solid governments should be behaving in peacetime as well as electioneering time. And I think it's not surprising at all that Boris Johnson is wanting to take this potentially very small window of opportunity to try and put his stamp on the domestic agenda.
Any new Prime Minister has an opportunity, don't they, to have a brief honeymoon when every announcement they make gets coverage.
That's absolutely right, and you have to grab it with both hands. And I think he will be very wise to the fact that, of course, it's highly possible that we will have an election. I don't think anyone necessarily knows the answer to that, and it may not be of his choosing, by the way. But he will be very wise to the fact that his own government may well be engulfed, like Theresa May's government was, come September, by the blanket coverage that we will see of Brexit.
Matt Sanders, in a way, that's the point, isn't it? Which is this Prime Minister knows from the experience of the last one is that he will not actually control events. Events, particularly when it comes to Brexit, will happen to him.
I think that's exactly right. And I think that's what you're seeing now with the Conservatives, that you can't deny that there is certainly more message discipline than there was under Theresa May. But I think the thing that's really important there is the figure you picked out of that 90% of Leave voters. And I think what you're now seeing is the Conservatives trying to rebuild this Vote Leave campaign. Dominic Cummings is certainly someone who is at his best when he's fighting an enemy, when he's got a battle underway. Most famously in education, when he labelled the entire sector the blob, he kind of created his own enemy. And now I think we're about to see a quite unpleasant campaign where the EU or Parliament is going to be the enemy in an attempt to bring that Vote Leave coalition back together.
In a sense, though, people looking at that, whether they admire it or not, may say, well, it sort of does seem to be working. What if you were still working inside government? What would you think were the possible downsides of the Cummings approach?
Well, I think that the problem is that the Tory electoral coalition is shrinking by their own actions. So if you think of David Cameron, he was actually enormously effective at sweeping up Liberal Democrat votes in those southwest seats by appealing to the centre ground. Theresa May took a different approach and went for leavers. And now the Dominic Cummings, Boris Johnson approach seems to be going for no dealers. So I would think that the number of people that they can appeal to is getting smaller and smaller.
Gabby Bertin, isn't that a problem? The very people you spent so many years working with David Cameron to try to appeal to modernise, in his language, the Conservative Party, may well be turned off by a lot of what they're seeing from Boris Johnson.
Well, I'm not sure I totally agree with that. I mean, I think the idea that sort of being tough on crime is somehow not appealing to people who don't vote Conservative is for the birds. I mean, I think obviously you've got to be very careful that you think about the before and the after. You have to talk about prevention, and you also have to talk about rehabilitation and victim support, and make sure that you offer a package that is as appealing as possible, as you say, to people who are not naturally
But more widely, given the
voters.
Talk of no deal, do you fear that the coalition that Cameron, Osborne and others built may be being shattered?
Well, look, I think we're about to face a very difficult moment when it comes to no deal, and of course there will be a lot of people who do not agree with, the no deal situation that frankly I think is looking fairly unavoidable. I'm afraid to say.
Let me bring Matt Sanders back in. That is the opportunity for your leader, then, James Swinson.
It is a huge opportunity for the Liberal Democrats, and certainly Lib Dem strategists will be saying, while the Tories are appealing to those no dealers, we have an opportunity to appeal to the full 48% that is united behind staying in the European Union.
Just to pick up the point made by Gabby, literally in about a sentence, if you could. We've got to finish the programme.
Well, if I could just say that I think that Boris Johnson has to be quite pleased with how it's going at the moment. The messages are landing, they're clear and they're simple. And I think that, I think that the next election will be very tough for every party.
Got to leave it there. Baroness Bertin, Matt Sanders, thank you.